you. You met a couple
Good afternoon. 4 o'clock. We are opening the Coastal Advisory Committee. And I am calling us to order right now. Thank you very much. Let's look at the Pledge of Allegiance. I have a volunteer.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's working now.
All right, Matthew, thank you very much.
Yeah. Do that at the end of the right hand of your heart. Ready? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Let's move along to roll call.
Committee Member Ayer.
Present.
Committee Member Dolegowski.
Present.
Committee Member Dow.
Here.
Committee Member Schmidt.
present.
Committee Member Van Noort.
Present.
Vice Chair Jacobs.
Present.
And Chair Ambrose.
Present. Thank you very much. Let's move to item number 1, approval of minutes. Anybody have any comment on the minutes? If not, I'd like a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve. I'll second.
Okay, moved by Brian and seconded by Rick. Thank you very much. Let us go on to number 2. I'd like to, I'm
We
sorry.
have a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. 7-0. Thank you. Alrighty, special presentations this evening. And I'd like to announce before we start that I have moved with the agreement with one of our extra speakers, our other special speakers, Nikki Beach, who was on item 6, I believe. And we're moving up her after Leslia talking on special presentation 2. So Nikki, is that okay for you? Thank you very much. Alrighty. Leslie, would you join us, please?
Good afternoon, committee chair and committee members. It's a pleasure to be here before you today, giving you a brief presentation on a brand new coastal collaboration that the city is embarking upon with UC Irvine, UCI, and the Samueli School of Engineering, and Dr. Brett Sanders, who was here in, I think it was November, presenting on some of the work that he's doing. So we reached out really about last summer and approached the university and asked them if they would be interested in collaborating with the city to bolster coastal resiliency along our coastline. And I'm happy to say that they accepted the offer, and we have recently kicked off the project with Brett. So he has rounded up a handful of Masters of Engineering students who are going to be working as a team and working with faculty guided by Brett and others to prepare what is called their capstone project, which is basically like a client project. So in this case, the client is the city of San Clemente, and they will be helping us with some of our challenges along the coastline. So again, the focus is on building coastal resiliency, bringing sand to the city in particular. And we feel confident that as an academic institution, they're going to bring an innovative mindset to sand delivery. So as I mentioned, we kicked off the project last week. We conducted what we call a low tide beach walk with Brett and some of the other faculty and the students and some city staff, and we walked from Poche and Shore Cliffs all the way down to Calafia. And the weather was beautiful. It was super low tide. It was a negative tide that day, so we had really just an amazing experience showing the faculty and the students the conditions on the ground, And in this case, because it was a super low tide, we had really no challenges walking along the beach, so it was ideal. We wanted to show the students and the faculty what kinds of challenges we are facing, both in terms of the riprap that's on the beach that we're dealing with, and also just areas where there are very eroded conditions. We also wanted to point out some of the beach nourishment project locations as well. So we pointed out North Beach, of course, and then the Army Corps footprint centered on the pier. So they will be assisting the city over the next 4 or 5 months in identifying compatible sand sources that are located in inland regions. So in other words, their focus will not be on the offshore bar area. That's subject of a study that we're currently working on. So they'll help us identify not only sand sources that are beach compatible, but they're also going to look at various methods of getting the sand to the beach. So we know that truck is the standard. You know, we completed our North Beach sand project using trucks. They're going to be expanding that and looking at pipelines, slurries, conveyor belts, and possibly electric vehicles. So we're leaving that to them to figure out. We're basically allowing them to consider all options and then look at which options are the most cost effective, which have the lowest environmental impact footprint, carbon footprint, what have the best economic return on investment, benefit cost ratio. All of those considerations are going to be subject to their study. And then at the end of the project, the capstone project, we hope to have some optimal engineering solutions for the city in terms of beach sand replenishment. So going forward, we are meeting with them on a bi-weekly basis via Zoom and in person. We're going to kind of rotate with that. And they will be presenting a draft report to the city in probably the March timeframe. This will just be a preliminary study which will continue into the second quarter. And I'm going to invite them to come make a presentation to the Coastal Advisory Committee in May when they have a draft report available. And then their final report will be due to their professors in June of 2025. And of course, we will share that with the committee as well. So that is really it. I think that's my last slide. So I just wanted to share this great news with you. We're really excited about this brand new collaboration. We have other collaborations going on, but this is our newest one, and we're all very excited about it. So there will be more probably in the newspaper. I think we're going to be doing a press release announcing this collaboration so everyone's aware of the work that we're doing. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Gentlemen?
I have a question. So this is great. Every time you come to one of our meetings, you always surprise us with all the studies and permitting activities and sources of new sand. So I'm always happy to see you here. So Brett is the same individual that gave the presentation back in November, correct?
That is correct.
Right, and and I think his presentation revolved around the shoreline monitoring. I think was it done by Doheny and kind of did kind of a study showing how the sand nourishment project then kind of moved down south during the winter time and things like that. I found that very interesting since I'm on the sand retention committee. I'm along with my fellow members here, trying to understand, what happens, what can we do to better understand how sand moves on the beach and is retained. And I'm just wondering, is there any part of that involved in this capstone study, or since this is with these research students, these students, they're more focused on sources of sand? So.
Well, let me answer that question by telling you that this collaboration is the start of what we hope will be a long-term collaboration. So for this first capstone project, the focus is going to be on sand sources and sand delivery. But the larger question of littoral processes and sediment transport, that will be very much a question we could ask them to delve into in the next iteration of this.
Okay, excellent, great, thank you very much.
Anybody else? Any questions for Leslie?
Just offhandedly, we were missing drones as an option to get sand in that laundry list.
Drones.
Yeah.
Yes, those would have to be massive drones.
It was open-ended, right?
I'll put it on the list.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt. John?
I have a comment. Yeah, I think it's great. I'm really happy to hear about this. Why is it that you're not including them in sand retention issues at this point? I believe you said it's because you already have consultants working on that.
That's correct. There's really two reasons. One is we do have a study underway. We're expecting to have a draft released sometime soon. And also the particular students that are on this particular capstone project do not have expertise in retention. They're more, their areas of expertise are more in transportation, and sediment mechanics.
Yeah, but Brett Sanders does. I mean, he would be a great reviewer of the next draft of the report that they put together. He'd have a lot of really good additional.
Absolutely.
That's a suggestion. And are there opportunities for the CAC members to be involved in this process?
I don't see why not. Yeah, absolutely. We are going to be having some kind of meeting or mixer with the faculty and the students at some point, and I'm sure that we'll make sure everybody's invited to attend that.
Yeah, that would be great, because there's a lot of direct overlap between what they're being tasked to do and what we're being asked to do. So
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Great questions. I was lucky enough to be at the event that Stance sponsored when we were talking about BBB and other coastal issues, and Brett was up there talking, and right towards the end, did you happen to attend that?
I did not attend that.
Okay, well then you'll like the story. He was up there and our city, and what's Andy's title?
Manager.
Thank you very much, Sandy Manager. I had dropped my glasses in the parking lot and nowhere to find them, so it's affecting my brain here too. But anyway, Andy was sitting there next to him, and he was saying, okay, I know before the meeting stops, I want to tell you how excited I am about this program that we're doing. This is Brett talking. He said, I shouldn't be telling anybody, but we've recruited about 50 to 100 interns who want to come down and work with us and learn and teach at the same time. And he was just going on with, just big smiles, and said, so if any of you are interested, if you know anybody, please come up and let me know later. And I did walk up later and said, well, the Coastal Advisory Committee for the city would be good, and of course I named you, of course, and so it was very exciting, and he was very excited. So he caught a whole cluster of people after he invited people up. So that was a very nice thing.
That's
Very good.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to expand their types of engineering disciplines that they have at their school, and start leaning more towards coastal engineering as a discipline, and a program that they offer. So I think they're almost as excited as we are about this collaboration.
I think it might be a great idea if you invited the Stance principals to one of those meetings, because I know they were involved in supporting other things that we've done with coastal issues and sand, etc. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Oh,
I'm just interested in the makeup of these students. I presume these are for academic credit as well. So
Yes.
and these are postgraduate, or are they undergraduate?
They are graduate students working on what's called a Master's of Engineering. It's a one-year program that UCI offers. So it's a very expedited, accelerated program for students that want to earn an engineering degree in 1 year. Some of them are already working. Others are purely academic still at this point. But I can probably get their backgrounds, if you're interested. They come from quite a wide variety. I know one of them has a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering, so they come at it from a very different angle, which I think helps just in the mindset of being open to possibilities and developing innovative solutions.
I wonder if any of them were residents of San Clemente.
No one indicated that they were when we did our low tide beach walk.
Well, and I'm curious as to the origin of this study. Did it originate with the professor or somewhere internally here?
I think it originated with, between Andy Hall, city manager, and then Mayor Victor Cabral. We met with the dean of the School of Engineering last summer and started just kicking around some ideas about how the two agencies could work together. And we've kind of gone back and forth on what should the focus of this first study be.
I want to echo what Ryan said, I think, and maybe John as well, that I think this is really a good initiative that we should be involved with, but I'm curious as to the Brown Act, I think. I know we can't, more than three of us can't participate in anything outside of this meeting without being punished for it, so is this one of those things where the three of us on the Sand Acquisition Committee could join these meetings or participate without being taken to task?
There was a memo submitted by the city attorney that clarified that issue, that if we're not making decisions, involving money or whatever, for the city, that it is okay, for example, for more than three or more of us to go to a community meeting where the main goal is receiving information. So.
Good. And in that case, I'd certainly like to be aware of it and participate in those as well. So.
Yeah, I'll look into that. So they're really just working sessions, but I'll look into maybe scheduling one here at City Hall where we can just sit around a round table and you all can meet all the students and the faculty involved and we can have some dialogue. As long as that doesn't help.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more the students and faculty understands what our concerns are, and that was your purpose of doing the walk and spending the time. But if we can spend a little more time collaborating with them so they're understanding what our concerns are as well, maybe that can help guide some of their studies.
It's a great
projects.
idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
As well as the work that you're doing.
Exactly.
Yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more. And so how is the city, are they providing financial support to the students as they work on this project?
Yes, I believe so. I believe so.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because the grad student obviously gets paid a lot more than a consultant, and there's a lot of number crunching and time consuming things that need to be done as part of the analysis. So I think that's a great idea.
We will look forward to you notifying us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty. And Nikki Beach, would you kindly join us for your presentation?
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for having me come up here and just give a quick informal update on the water quality programs for the city. I know that we had a very sand-heavy meeting last time we all met, so hopefully this will be helpful for you to get a little update on what's going on with water quality, specifically Poche Beach.
Perfect.
So we had talked about a large capital project at Poche Beach to do a low-flow dry weather diversion that would ultimately reclaim the stormwater, or not stormwater, but the dry weather runoff for use as a recycled water source. But, in the interim, we don't really have the capacity for that recycled water in our recycled water plant, which is essentially our wastewater treatment plant. So there's been a lot of looking at the different needs and where we're at with the city. And so we're actually currently moving forward on obtaining a design consultant to just design the diversion so that diversion can be used in the short term to send any dry weather runoff, or I should say all dry weather runoff, to the ocean outfall that's right off San Juan Creek. So it kind of would be pushed through the existing sand filters of the existing Poche Clean Beach project, which is the current UV system. It has sand filters to remove kind of the large debris in the water. So that would still be used, but then the water would just be kind of filtered so the large stuff comes out, and then that water would go kind of commingle with the rest of the pre-treated sewage for disposal offshore. And that means that water, even if it has a little bit of bacteria in it, it wouldn't show up in our surf zone water quality sampling, and it also wouldn't affect recreational water uses at Poche Beach. And then that diversion, you know, in the long term, when we have a need and the financial sensibility of reclaiming that water for recycled water use, then we could redirect that diversion to send that water towards our wastewater collection system, which sends it back to our treatment plant, which produces recycled water, and then that water can either be distributed to our recycled water customers or stored possibly in a regional recycled water reservoir. So that's kind of where we're at with the actual development of the project. I do want to touch on the funding for the project because I know Susan was interested in that too. There have been some updates, I guess, since we last really talked about it a couple of meetings ago. The Orange County Transportation Authority has the Environmental Cleanup Program, which provides grant funding for transportation-related water quality impacts. And because we do have transportation land uses in the Poche watershed, it really makes sense. And they did formally award us $2.5 million, which is the maximum amount towards the project. We have to match it by 50%, but we are anticipating that even the diversion will probably, at this, you know, post-COVID inflation environment, will still probably cost us nearly $5 million. So we anticipate being able to use that $2.5 million. One caveat is that we do have to get a construction contract in place by the end of this year, but we are working with OCTA to get an extension because realistically, like getting a design this year and then getting a construction contract on board in the same calendar year is probably going to be a little challenging. So we don't anticipate problems with that. We have another nearly $1 million coming to us from the EPA, but that is kind of a long-winded process. It was earmarked by Congressman Levin, and that additional $1 million is kind of held up by the EPA, so we have to kind of apply for it even though it's already earmarked. So we have to go through a NEPA process, which is the National Environmental Policy Act. It's basically CEQA for the national level of projects. And so we're starting to go through that with the county and secure that funding. I want to go back to the Orange County Transportation Authority, $2.5 million. So Miley has kind of a screenshot of the recent OC Register article that came out mid-December. And so they actually featured our grant awards for the Environmental Cleanup Program. We received 2 Environmental Cleanup Program awards actually, one for Poche and then also a smaller one to continue our trash capture device installations on our storm drain inlets. I'm not sure if I've spoken with this group about what those look like, but if you ever drive by a storm drain inlet along the side of a road and you see kind of this large mesh trap thing on it, that's part of that project, and that helps prevent trash and any associated bacteria from entering our storm drain system. So yeah, we got a really cool article with a lot of cool pictures celebrating our Environmental Cleanup Program Award. And there's copies that I printed out in the back of the room, so if you want to grab one on your way out and take a look, feel free.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then just the last update on Poche is that we do have this regulatory cloud hanging over our heads. We have a time schedule order with the water board because we didn't meet our dry weather TMDLs, which are total maximum daily loads for bacteria. That's basically the receiving water limitations and how many exceedances on bacteria levels are allowable at Poche Beach. And so that's no surprise, but we have basically this time schedule order that's kind of like an agreement to kind of work towards compliance with the water board. So we have to report on it every year, so it's one more report to do. So I do want to thank this group because in that report I was able to refer to the Coastal Advisory Committee being resurrected as another positive. We've had literature reviews done by the committee. We've done watershed investigations, specifically the Water Quality Subcommittee. And so I want to thank that group for their work on that because that does show that not only are we invested in finding solutions at Poche Beach, but we also have this citizen group that is kind of vouching for city staff that, you know, we are doing the best we can to try to resolve the issues. So thank you very much. And even just talking about pet waste and the other sources of bacteria has been really helpful in not just my overall understanding of what might be going on, but also my ability to communicate what we're doing to resolve the issues at Poche. So thank you to this group. And that's it, unless you have any questions.
Any questions? Yes.
I have a question. Thank you again. Let's see. Can you help describe again, there's these different funding mechanisms that are kind of trickling down, the Levin money. You're saying that's actually through the EPA, approximately $1 million, but it's, we have to go through a couple hurdles before that gets released. And then the OCT money, $2.5 million, but then what the city would have to come up with another $2.5 million. So is that money, are those monies looking to be, put together to be a total of $6 million? And how would that $1 million from the EPA be used? Is that also going to be used for system design or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I should have clarified that the matching funds could be sources from other grants. So we're actually planning on using that $1 million as part of our $2.5 million match. So we're really looking for that extra $1.5 million. So things we can look at is the state revolving fund for water quality projects. That's an option to get a low cost loan for water projects in general, not just quality, but also supply. And so there's opportunities there. They're a little bit difficult to apply for actually. I think the state revolving fund is kind of involved in this EPA process. I'm not really following it too closely because thankfully I have some staff at the county that are helping to try to really hone in on that funding because they're the ones that kind of secured that through Supervisor Foley's office. But yeah, that $1 million can be used as part of our match. And then design costs are kind of up in the air right now. We're hoping to maybe move some money around in the city budget, but that's going to be a drop in the bucket, I think, compared to the construction costs.
Yeah, design costs are usually kind of a function of the overall estimated construction costs typically, right? 6-12% construction costs and design costs. And so then can you describe again to me what the ultimate result would be from this new design? You were saying that the non-stormwater runoff that we're currently getting would be diverted from where it's currently going into a new treatment plant that would then go into the city's waste outfall?
Yeah, so the original project concept was to send that water to perhaps even the city's water reclamation plant on Pico. And so the diversion would take that non-stormwater runoff and basically dump it into the sewer so that it gets collected and then treated. And then when our water reclamation plant has treated water to tertiary standards, it can distribute it as recycled water. The recycled water or the treated wastewater that does not need to be used for irrigation, which there may be some excess depending on the season, depending on flows, that gets discharged to the ocean outfall, so it gets sent down another pipeline along PCH towards San Juan Creek, where it combines with other wastewater treatment plants discharges to be discharged several hundred feet offshore, underground, or underwater, I should say, not underground. So that was the ultimate goal for the original project, but because ultimately we don't have the demand for that recycled water because we don't have enough pipes to distribute it to people who want it. So when I say demand, I'm not talking about raise your hand if you want recycled water, because everybody in the city can raise their hand. But we just don't have the pipelines to distribute that much water. So until we get to that point with all these different other water projects like expanding our recycled water system or improving our recycled water quality so it's not so salty so that we can have these sharing agreements with neighboring water districts who can take some of our water and store it in their reservoirs or distribute it to their customers through a sale agreement or something like that. We really just can't use extra supplies right now. So with that said, we have a regulatory deadline to resolve the water quality issues within the next few years. So we want to build the diversion, but save money by not pushing it through reverse osmosis, which would have been necessary to be able to treat it at a water reclamation plant, and just push it through existing sand filters at the UV treatment system so that we can discharge it directly to the outfall where the rest of the treated sewage is already flowing towards San Juan Creek. Or the outfall off of San Juan Creek. I don't want to say San Juan Creek because that sounds bad.
So I mean, in terms of reporting back to the Water Quality Control Board, I mean, we have a plan to deal with it. I mean, so it's just kind of a timing issue. So which is a lot more to be said than a lot of other people that have water quality issues. So it sounds like we have a plan.
We do.
And so it's just communicating with the Water Board. The timing of that plan might not match with some arbitrary deadline that they've set, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not an arbitrary deadline because it is part of the TMDLs. There are a lot of other moving parts on the regulatory side, like, first of all, the TMDL requirements and the levels of bacteria that are considered acceptable. And keep in mind, these are indicator bacteria, so they're not bacteria that are necessarily harmful in those quantities on their own, but they tend to indicate that there is a human source of wastewater or a human source of bacteria in that water. And so it raises a red flag, if you will. So there is an interest in working with other MS4 permittees in the area to reopen the TMDL, which means basically ask for a different set of criteria by which to evaluate if we are really impairing the beneficial uses of water in the Pacific Ocean. So there's that in the background that, maybe that will change the situation in Pochi. By doing the project, we will not necessarily change the water quality testing results at the surf zone because we're not doing a project at the surf zone, we're doing it slightly upstream. But the idea of the project, that's the diversion project, is that we are removing all potential discharges from our MS4, from our stormwater collection system to the ocean. So any bacteria that is found in the ocean can be deduced to not be due to our system, and therefore we would be in compliance. So kind of an interesting regulatory situation when you look at it from that perspective. So, all of these things come into play. And of course, we are talking about the project in our compliance reports to the regional board so that they know that this is on the radar and in the pipeline. And so we do have a plan for compliance. Whether or not we'll see compliance until the very last year to do that compliance, that remains to be seen. We may see some changes, we may not. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Sounds like some very bright engineers put their heads together. Any other questions?
I do, yeah. So I think that's great news that you got that additional funding from OCTA. I was wondering if that infusion of money is part of any grant agreement, including the discussions of armoring the coast, the south part of San Clemente, or if this is a completely separate issue.
Yeah, this is part of the transportation funding agreement, which I think is separate. It deals more with like the different grants that we get for the trolley and those kind of grants, and that's a big grant program, of which a subset is the environmental cleanup program. Mm-hmm. I'm not super familiar with like the railway alignment grant funds and where those play into their grant programming, but yeah. It is more or less separate.
Okay, and so the diverted water is going to be only in the dry season, you said, so during the winter time the flow will continue to be discharged at Pochi Beach. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Typically our wet weather results are not as dramatically out of compliance. We at the same time, we do have some compliance issues, as do many of the co-permittees in South Orange County that have stormwater systems. And so we are working collaboratively to do something that is being dubbed the Stormwater CIP, Regional Stormwater CIP. And what we're doing is looking at different locations throughout our jurisdiction and also neighboring jurisdictions to achieve what we're calling load reductions, which means basically places where we can retain or slow the flow of or somewhat clean stormwater within our jurisdiction before it discharges to the ocean. So looking at places where we might have a basin that isn't really functioning to be protective of water quality, but adding some attributes to it, maybe enhancing it so that it can have more of an effect on cleaning the water before it discharges downstream. And by doing that, we can actually use modeled approaches to kind of calculate how much less bacteria will be going down to the ocean. And that's another compliance pathway that doesn't necessarily rely on the testing at the beach. It's more of a modeled approach to calculate how we are complying with the water quality regulations. So that's what's going on regionally on the wet weather front.
Great, so you're going to continue to operate the existing treatment plant at Pochi, correct?
Yeah, and it typically only operates in dry weather. It is a dry weather BMP, a dry weather treatment structure. So it will be continually operated until we have a new way to divert the water.
And when that diversion goes in place, then that's going to divert 100%, so it won't be necessary to run it at all in the summer, right, in the dry season? Is that right?
The new one will run hopefully 100% of the time in the dry weather. Not just dry season, but any dry weather, when we have some kind of runoff, hopefully all of it will be diverted when the new project is built.
That's the future.
Yeah.
But the current plant, is that going to be mothballed then, once the diversion goes in?
Like I said, there are some sand filters that are used to clean the large debris from the water and particulate matter from the water, and I think those sand filters may be repurposed so that we can at least remove the large stuff. It really depends on our permitting. We really have to work with the South Orange County Wastewater Authority, SACWA, to see what their permit requirements will be for them to accept the water, because they own the outfall that comes out into the offshore area, offshore of San Juan Creek. And so they will be the ones that tell us like what our water has to look like to be able to be accepted. So we may need just sand filters, we may need some other minor treatment. Hopefully we won't need reverse osmosis, which is the expensive part of the full project, right? And you brought up the wet weather. I just want to make a comment too that the Poche Beach Water Reclamation Project, the big new project, in the future, it could, in theory, be expanded to have higher capacity so that we could divert all stormwater during the wet season. That's a lot of water, so, I don't know what plants will exist at that point to treat it. Maybe we'll have desal on board at Doheny, and maybe they'll want the water, I'm not sure. So there are opportunities in the future to expand the plant.
But at any rate, when the new diversion is in place, then that should reduce the likelihood of the current plant being fouled by the high tides, right? Because
Exactly.
Hasn't that been an
Yeah.
issue where the
Yeah.
salt water is being, is backing up into the system, and then you have to shut down the treatment plant because it's overloaded?
The current plant flows from basically the coastal side of El Camino Real, PCH, and the new diversion would be on the other side, on the inland side, to send that water where it doesn't enter the beach at Poche.
That's a big advantage as well.
Yeah, and there, I say that there could still be exceedances in the ocean because we're not responsible for anything after our stormwater system ends. But logically, the stormwater system does collect and transport bacteria because bacteria are everywhere. So even natural sources of bacteria that we can eliminate from going downstream will benefit the water quality as determined by indicator bacteria.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh. All right, thank you. I have a question though. Don't you sit on or attend some of the water district meetings?
The South Orange County Watershed Management Area meetings, perhaps. All of the South Orange County water agencies and cities have a voting member on that committee. And I think our mayor is actually the representative on that committee.
And do you think that would be valuable to us, any of us, to attend one of those meetings?
Yeah, actually, they are looking at reducing the schedule of those meetings because the South Orange County Watershed Management Area Executive Committee was formed to kind of mostly manage the integrated water management grants that were coming in from, I believe it was Prop 1. Was it Prop 1? So that was their primary objective, a lot of it was to figure out how they're distributing those funds. And because there's less of that funding available now, they're kind of more of like in an information gathering or information distributing like era of their committee life. So they are looking at reducing the number of meetings, but they are very interesting. There's some good presentations that come out of those. So yeah, I'd encourage the committee members to come to that committee meeting. They're usually on, I want to say Thursday afternoons, so probably before this, but not necessarily the same days. I think it's not the third Thursdays of the month, it's some other day. I'd have to look, but I can distribute that through FAC to you guys.
Oh, great, that would be great, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions for Nikki? Great job, Nikki, as usual, thank you very much.
Thank you for having my update. Thanks.
Alrighty. let us go to oral communications. Had one card that person has left. And I have another card here for Amanda Q.
Hello, yes, actually, Dr. Susie Whitelaw had to leave, but she asked me to remind people about Save Our Beaches San Clemente Community Event on Monday, January 27th, 2025, from 6 to 7 presentations, and from 7 to 7:30 discussion. It's going to be at the San Clemente Community Center at 100 North at Cayenne Seville, San Clemente, and snacks and drinks will be provided, and please RSVP. And I think there's a QR code, and I'll leave that back there. I think there probably is more if there. And I just wanted to mention, I'm so glad that Nikki Beach mentioned the OCTA and their donation, or actually their grant. This is coming from Measure M2 funds, which are a source of funding for transportation in Orange County, and this comes from the half-cent sales tax that the voters voted on years ago. So it's just part of what their responsibility is, and we wouldn't have the trolley if it wasn't for the OCTA or the Mariposa Bridge, which I think they're working on trying to accommodate or do something regarding that once the landslide stops and the groundwater seeping through the bluffs. So we really are dependent on OCTA for many projects throughout the years, and have developed a great partnership with OCTA. So I'm really glad that that is. And then I wanted to also discuss that part of the OCTA, were included in our nature-based coastal resiliency study to the point where they did include public comments. And part of that, it was one letter to Adamatanian, and then one to the Director of Community Development at the time, and that was Cecilia Gallardo Daly. And they were very responsive and in the needs of the city to accommodate anything, any kind of plans or projects that the nature-based resiliency study had. And they also offered, let's see what they said. It says, would the city need to utilize the railroad to assist with the transportation of sand for nourishment or riprap for groin or cobble, boulder, living reef? If so, the city would need to coordinate with OCTA and Metrolink to determine the cost and schedule to provide any support. The city would be responsible for bearing the transportation cost. However, OCTA can assist the city in seeking state and federal grants for this effort. So it's really great that they're trying to help out back in October of 2023. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your information. Any other cards? Okay, I'm close oral communications. Go to unfinished business. And we're looking at work plans. I'm going to go in the order that they're put in right now. I understand the sand acquisition subcommittee is ready to talk to us and to share what they're doing. So who would like to talk?
I will speak on behalf of the acquisition subcommittee.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob.
The first thing I'd like to do is just to bring to everybody's attention, you got an updated San Clemente Coastal Project status update.
Yes.
This was something that I had asked Leslie for. We initially were presented with one of these in June or July, or I think it was our July meeting.
Yeah.
And so just wanted to get updated, and so that's for your information. As I think I shared at the prior meeting, the focus of our subcommittee has been primarily on the offshore sand source investigation, because that touches so many of our replenishment projects. obviously primarily the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, but other potential projects as well. And just to give you an update on where we're at in that project, and to remind everybody, this was a project to try to identify a more approximate borrow site because the cost of sand is negligible, but the transportation of that sand is very expensive. So if the city can find a closer borrow site, that would be a huge win. We were funded, the city was funded with an $800,000 grant from the Coastal Commission, and Coastal Frontiers was the selected vendor. The project was broken down into 3 phases. We're now well through the first phase, should be wrapped up by the end of February. That first phase was a desktop study, taking all the information that's out there from past studies, so that we could then take that information and analyze it, and then determine where we should proceed to phase 2, which is field work. So what will happen in phase 2, which should be this summer, is they'll conduct field work where they'll go out and do borings into these identified sites. And one of the concerns of the subcommittee was, as we develop these sites, because we have limited funds and we could be doing boring samples all over the place, how are we determining what sites, because this is where the money is spent, is in phase 2. The other phases aren't that expensive, but being out on the water, doing the borings, that's where the expense is. So what the city is doing is using a real, what I would call a well-defined matrix-based approach, looking at both the proximity of a potential site and the potential for that site to yield results, and then determining, based on those, weighting those 2 factors, where we should be conducting the boring samples. And so the boring, again, will occur in the summer, and then the phase 3, the report should be completed by the end of the year. And that's the latest on that project.
That's the latest. Any other of your colleagues want to comment with that?
I have a question. That's primarily offshore sand acquisition. The study with UC Irvine is onshore acquisition. Is that the difference?
Did you put on your speakerphone?
Yes.
Or why not? Yes, Amanda. So that's for primarily land-based acquisition of sand. Is that right? You know, if there should be any collaboration or communication between the two. Get it up.
I think that they're fairly siloed
Yeah.
projects, and no reason to, at least in my mind.
So that $800,000 is for the first phase of expected 3.
That's the total project cost,
Okay.
and the bulk of those funds will be,
So that includes the boring. Okay. Yeah. And Coastal Frontiers, will they subcontract out for that actual work, or will they do it themselves?
I believe they do that themselves.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'd like to see a copy of that, where that stands. Good. That's all.
Okay, Jennifer? Alrighty, thank you. Let's go to Sand Retention Subcommittee. I understand that you've met recently, and you can tell us about what you've been up to and what you'd like to be up to.
We have, and thank you very much, Susan. Yeah, so the Sand Retention Committee, Subcommittee did meet, and I guess I'd like to just go rewind the clock a little bit, but Sand Retention Committee, back in September, I think, we talked about trying to understand what programs that the city currently had in place to monitor the performance of the beaches, the beach here in San Clemente, the widths, the area, and things like that. And we'd asked Leslie to provide some information on that. And sure enough, last November, she came back and fielded, I think, 3 different presentations. One was with the state of the beach. I think it was with, let's see, who was it? It was Greg. No, yeah, is that right? Who was it? It was, hang on a second. Where's my notes? It was, who provided that presentation? It was Frank.
Huron.
Yes, great. Thank you very much. Greg Huron. Yeah, there it was right in front of my face there. Greg Huron from Coastal Frontiers provided an excellent presentation on the monitoring of the shorelines, which I believe are done twice a year at 12 different transects, and actually presented some historical data over the last 20 years on which beaches were growing at X number of feet per year, or reducing X number of feet per year. It was my understanding, I was hoping, Leslie, I was still going to be here, so I can ask you this question, but if not, I'll just throw it over to staff. But it was my understanding that that program was funded through 2025 for the funding of that shoreline monitoring program. And so I guess my question was that how is that program funded, and do we have any concerns as a subcommittee want to ensure that program continues, because it's the only program that has collected data on our shoreline, the widths of our beaches dating back to I think the 1930s or whatnot. So I guess that's a question to staff. If you know the answer, great. If not, we can put it on.
I know a piece of the answer. So the monitoring program that you heard about from Coastal Frontiers, and then a bit of it that you heard about from Professor Sanders at the last meeting, is mostly funded by Coastal Commission Round 7 grant. We've gotten now 8 grants from the Coastal Commission. That's different from the Coastal Commission funding that's going towards the sand source investigation. That's a bigger and more recent grant. So this is, you're right, that grant is subject to end in about a year.
So is there anything that this committee or the city needs to do to obtain funding to continue that monitoring?
One thing this committee could do, and I think was talked about a bit at the last meeting, is look at other monitoring programs that are already going on. The city itself does a bit of monitoring through the lifeguards, and then there have been various student groups that have done monitoring. There have been nonprofit entities, I don't know if it's Save Our Beaches or one of the others that does monitoring. And so this committee could look at whether those could be better consolidated or explained by one entity, and then look at what the best, most useful data going forward would be and how that could be paid for.
Yeah, so I guess, the outcome of, I think, some of the things we discussed in the subcommittee was that shoreline monitoring program that has been ongoing for many, many, many years is one data set that ought to be continued to be added upon. So the question is how do we ensure that specific program continues to get funded rather than trying to piecemeal another program into it. So I guess that's one of the things that came out of our subcommittee meeting. I'll just kind of leave that with staff as a question to answer. I just, since it's been ongoing for quite some time, I would just want to be reassured that the city is planning on continuing that program. If not, then that's something we need to know as well. The other thing that we discussed in the subcommittee was the presentation that was given by Brett Sanders, which I think is also which was a one-time study, I think over 4 or 5 months during a nourishment project conducted in Doheny Beach in 2023. That was a really good study to kind of show how a nourishment in one location affects other beaches, down gradient, so to speak, how it affected the widths of other beaches, which I think is an important component for us to continue to look at, because with the new SCOOP program that we're going to have and all sorts of other potential sources of nourishment projects that could be happening in the coming months or years, as a part of the Sand Retention Committee, we ought to have another way of kind of monitoring the performance of those nourishment events to see how that sand moves and how it stays on our beaches. And then of course we all know that the natures-based coastal resiliency feasibility study is also talking about engineering controls about different types of structures that we could put in to help retain the stand. So those are some of the things that my subcommittee spoke about. If I've missed anything, please let me know, Matt or John.
Yeah, I wanted to, that when we, the three of us in the subcommittee, discuss some of these issues, that Matt had some interesting ideas about additional data that could augment the twice per year monitoring that are already in progress. Could you give a little more detail on that for the record, Matt?
Yeah, I think echoing Zach's kind of sentiment of looking elsewhere for data instead of paying a environmental consulting company to pull that data. I honestly like the idea of lifeguards doing it. It's just holding a stick in water and recording the depth. But there's also like things like Brett Sanders can do with satellite imagery that could augment our biannual survey on a maybe quarterly basis to start or something like that, to where we fill in the gaps a little bit between a spring and a winter or fall, I guess it's spring and fall survey. On top of that, and going back to the kind of the nature-based resiliency study, something that I know that I've heard John and Brian talk about, where that the study has dropped a few ideas that I think the committee is interested in looking back on, and this is due to community feedback, right? But in terms of actual ability to analyze things, like there was in the nature-based feasibility study, there was I think it was the first phase, there was bulking up the pier, right, to create a resistor in that. Right now, we are seeing what the pier is doing to sand. So we literally have a real-time experiment going on right now that if we monitor it, we could then expound it to, if you were to bulk up the pier even more, how would that slow sand through the drift? So it seems like a missed opportunity to not take the current retention structure that exists, right, and see what it's doing to sand. And that kind of connects to the monitoring, which I think kind of straddles sand acquisition and sand retention, but I think falls a little bit more in sand retention. So with all that said, I don't know how to recommend looking into continuing the thought down the pier side of it, but as we've seen the past 2 winters, at least in Central California, these piers are liable to break, and it's probably in San Clemente's best interest to get ahead of that, because it's only a matter of time before 1983 happens again. So that's my spiel.
Any other comments from?
Yeah, you had also mentioned that that you were aware that the DoD periodically completes some fairly detailed bathymetric surveys, which are pretty high, pretty accurate, and are used for national defense purposes, and traveling submarines and stuff like that.
I think Zach was actually looking into the LiDAR readings from the Navy, or were these, so there's the sonar of the bathymetry, and then there's the LiDAR of the coastline, right? And I believe Pendleton would probably have access to kind of the bathymetric data in detail. I don't know.
Maybe State Park.
I haven't asked Ken Pendleton lately. I don't remember the exact discussion. I was going to report later today that the city actually hired a different consultant through a different Coastal Commission grant that flew over the city a few weeks ago in an airplane.
Oh, nice.
And got pretty high resolution aerial imagery as well as LiDAR data, and they'll be compiling those files for us and sharing them in the next couple of weeks, and I could very well share those with you if you're interested. So that'll be LiDAR and aerial imagery for the entire city. The county has data going back a few decades that's not quite detailed enough for a good comparison.
So in going back to kind of John's comment about detailed. I want to say it's like the sonar version of LiDAR, right? The bathymetry LiDAR. I know that stuff gets collected, but it's not necessarily published. So just due to the nature of, the Navy has to know the ocean floor if it's going in and out of it. So that data might be out there and you might be able to use it, but hunting it down is beyond the scope of, I think, the committee here. Unless we were to be, I don't know who the contact is for Pendleton or the Navy.
We have a contact at NOAA and we have a contact at the county. That's the LiDAR that we've gotten for free before, mostly used by planning and GIS staff to work on projects related to the bluff geomorphology that are also relevant to the Coastal Commission and geologic stability.
Okay.
So I think we're kind of having a subcommittee meeting discussion here as we talk. But I think that so understanding the littoral flow of the sand and will help us better understand retention issues because we do know that we're going to be getting numerous infusions of sand, on the beach, and so a better understanding the bathymetric depths just right off the surf zone, I think is going to be helpful to know whether or not those areas are filled in. Once those areas get filled in, then a more recent sand deposition might have a better chance of staying on the beach and moving down the shore. So it's just understanding that process and making sure that we have some sort of uniform and consistent monitoring program in place. So those are some of the things that the subcommittee's been talking about on sand retention.
Yeah, and I will also say firsthand experience with the sandbars from T Street to the pier. The sand is soft compared to our normal sand. It is soft and it is moving. If you were to step into the surf zone, it is not your normal sandbar that I remember growing up. So there's a lot of movement of sand happening right now. And that's to be expected. We just got, 300,000? 240 if you count North Beach. 250. So, yeah, there's beach at Mariposa.
Yes. Any other comments?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alrighty, very, very nicely done. Water Quality Subcommittee, that's myself and John and Deke. And it's my happiness to let you know that Deke will be more active in what we're doing here, as long as we let him know when we're doing things. I know we're all very busy, and if we miss somebody by a phone call or by a text, keep it up until you can get that person's attention and let them know what we're doing and what you're doing, what your planning are, and if you can, when you can be, have them all together to talk. I think there was some of the subcommittees have actually chosen to meet in off months where we're not meeting as a group, as a coastal advisory committee. So you might want to entertain that as well. Alrighty, so water quality, you already know that John and I have worked a lot on this. Most of our work has been done prior to Deke's entering our group as well. And we presented several things to you in terms of water quality and just the whole motions of it and what that has done with Pochi and the work that we're doing now with environmental science and Dave's whole people, and that includes the one and only Nikki. So those kinds of things are what we're looking at. But I'd like to ask my colleague John to spin out some kinds of comments that we talked about before and things that we're looking forward to do now, particularly regarding Pochi, how we can help.
Yeah, well, for Pochi, we had, prior to our last meeting, we had met with with Nikki and Zach and went through the previous draft of the presentation that I put together for Pochi. It was a lot of information, and with the goal of paring that down to a more focused presentation. So we discussed specific changes. I've made those changes. I have a new draft of the presentation available that I can share with you folks, whatever, by email or send you a hard copy, whatever works. And then in addition, we've been asked to put together a further shortened version covering the Pochi Beach topic for presentation at the City Council. So I'm going to be doing that over the next few weeks. As part of that, we wanted to come up with some summary graphics that were easier to read from a distance and kind of more comprehensive in terms of changes in water quality. So the data that are available from Orange County Healthcare Agency, they have prepackaged in spreadsheets for like initially 10-year duration and then 3 years, and then the most recent periods are 1 year. So I downloaded all that those spreadsheets and then cut out and pasted together the data specifically for San Clemente. So I've got that available, and if you don't have something like that, Nikki, I could send you a copy if that would be helpful. Do you have the ability to directly query the database that they use to put together those spreadsheets? I was wondering, or are you in the same situation whenever you're asked to put together graphics?
Nikki Beach, Environmental Programs Analyst. So we're talking about the Orange County Beach info website, yeah. That's all managed by the healthcare agency, and they can sometimes get you like more granular data if you ask, but I've had some success getting additional data. I know I was trying to look at specific time data for their sampling, not just dates, so we could try to correlate it with tides. So far, it seems to be all over the place, but I didn't do a regression or anything like that. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for that. So anyway, so that's the work that I have cut out for me over the next 2-month period.
Well, thank you very much. Nikki, if you don't mind, would you come to the podium one more time so I could ask a question of you?
Yes, this is Nikki Beach again.
Hey, thank you very much. You probably recall the graphics that we put together that were put together by Coastal Advisory Committee as the committee changed and more detailed information was put into these graphs and these spreadsheets. And I'm wondering if you could find that base and we could recreate it in our efforts rather than going back and forth with the county. Is there any way that we can look at that? Because it had times.
I still haven't been able to locate the template unless you have a copy that you could show me.
I'd have to clean out my garage, those boxes.
I've heard wonderful things about these previous water quality reports, but I have yet to graze my eyes over one.
All right.
So
I will try to think of some other people that were on that committee with me.
yeah, I could try to reach out to some of my predecessors too and see if they know where they might be, but
That would be really great because they had the time elements, they had the weather elements, we had it color coded, we had everything. And this is really, gentlemen, I'm focusing on bacteria. So we could find out when it came, what the weather was like, and if you could just at a glance, in 1 minute, you could see how this happened.
Yeah.
And it just was fabulous. And if we could come up with something like that, I mean, that would save so much time. And it would give so much information to all our subcommittees of many things.
yeah, it's possible that kind of reporting also dropped off because there's a lot more information easily available online. I don't want to discount what the healthcare agency has done with their Orange County Beach Info website, where you can just get a snapshot of everybody that's in green along the coastline. Means water quality is great, no worries.
Yes, I've seen that.
And then there's like the yellow warnings, and then the red is like usually reserved for wastewater spills.
But those they don't give you the information why and how they have that color. whereas the big spreadsheet did.
Yeah, I think it's a correlation versus causation too, though. So you might have more information on that big spreadsheet, but it's correlated, not necessarily caused. I mean, when we have wastewater spills, those are usually identified on ocbeachinfo.com
Yes.
or ocbeachinfo.com, I think, yeah. But like, you know, because it was raining and because it was high tide, is that why we got a bacterial exceedance, or was there already a lot of bacteria in the water? You know, so
Yeah.
you have to be mindful when you think of data that way. So
Yes.
Was it San Diego that just had wastewater?
I actually just a couple hours ago I saw in the news that there was a spill leading to Aliso Creek,
Okay.
originating in Laguna Niguel
Okay.
Lake.
I saw that too.
Yeah, so South Laguna and most of South Laguna and probably part of Dana Point is closed right now.
And then just a quick question on top of that while we got Nikki at the podium. Do we, like, I'm just kind of curious about, I know that Palos Verdes blocks a lot of the sediment from said fires in LA, but I know that there's some eddies swirling around in the Southern California flag. Do we know if any, like, would this pop up on the beach monitoring? Like any sort of, I guess, fire debris or, I don't know, asbestos in the water, or things like that. Like,
That's a really interesting question. The Capistrano bite, I think, is a little bit shielded from that, but I would
that
have
was
to.
what I was understanding too. And I was
That's
just
what I
wondering-
would suspect, but I don't know for sure without looking into it further. But yeah, I mean, when we do get rain, if and when we do hopefully get some reasonable amount of rain, it'll be interesting to see what ends up in the ocean around there.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the cleanup, so.
Well, and
that's-
what comes down as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, just there's a lot of like toxic materials that probably burned and ended up in the soil, so that's gonna be problematic for sure.
Good questions.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Sure, no worries, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I have to leave at 5:30, so I just want to to call that out while we're in a
Okay.
pause, so that when I vacate, it's not taken personally by anybody.
Thank you very much. With that, though, I think we're ready. We have no new business. Items from staff?
All right, this will be quick. The first item from staff was Nikki's presentation that got bumped up.
Yeah.
The second item that I was going to note and that I had sort of previewed at the last meeting but isn't quite ready yet is the data from that aerial imagery and LiDAR, which I think at the last meeting I said I would share with Committee Member Schmidt and Committee Member Van Noort. And I also said I would share, I think it was like Coastal Records Project data related to satellite imagery going back to 1985.
Yeah.
Let's see if I already found that. And then I will try to summarize if we have any other relevant LiDAR data. I think the best we have is from the county, but I can give a summary of what we've got on that. So I'll do that by email following this meeting when we get
That'll be
that.
made available via email, is that right?
That'll be via email to, I was thinking specifically to the Sand Acquisition Committee.
Yeah, so can you do the same acquisition and then Susan, and then she can forward it off to the other people so that we're not ground acting anything?
I can, anything I forward by email, I can forward to all of you.
Forward it to
Yeah.
everybody.
You just shouldn't have a discussion by replying all in that email.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. Just
So I'll
got all
forward those
of
resources.
So maybe just BCC everybody so that if they reply all, it's just you and like Miley.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
And then that'll trail into, I think, the discussion that Susan may be about to lead in item 7, other information that I'll be forwarding. And then the final thing I said I would report back on, but I don't have much of a report, is it was requested that staff update the committee on anything related to follow-up from Measure BB. I consulted with city leadership and the city clerk, and they said it's not the purview of the Coastal Advisory Committee to follow up on Measure BB. You're all free to do what you would like as individual citizens, but that's not the focus of our work.
Okay, thank you. Now, in terms of what you're going to send us, Nikki, excuse me, would you like copies of that? Of the things that he's done records on? All you need is no more records, right? Okay, thank you. Alrighty, just,
Sorry, could I ask a question on that last one?
Yeah.
So it's the city is not going to share information on what the plan is like going forward with respect to funding?
I'm not going to share information, and this committee is not tasked with leading that discussion. I assume some people in city leadership and in city council have ideas, but the guidance I was given is that's not the purview of this committee.
Alrighty, so on 7, I did talk to Zach about this. I get a lot of invites to go to information places, events, current events. Most of them are coastal related, Coastal Quest or the California Coastal Commission or various things from UCI, on and on and on. And I would like to share those with you. I think that we could either put a blackboard of what's up, or we could just send them to everybody to see if they're interested in attending. Can you raise your hand to let me know if you think that's a good idea right now? Yes?
Yeah, especially after clarification that we can go and attend without
Yes.
fear of the Brown Act. as long as
This,
we don't see-
are we yeses?
We all received a copy of that memo, but if you don't remember which one it is, I can send it back out to the group just to clarify,
great.
because this issue has come up repeatedly.
I think you want to send it to Miley or Zach, and then they send it out to the group. Because
Okay.
I think if you
That's
send it out to
clear.
the group, then it's a Brown Act violation.
Well, we
don't want to do that.
we can send out things, we can send out the information about the events.
I think everybody got it originally in an email. So.
Okay. Yeah, I just know that this is the tricky Browns Act.
Yeah.
Like it's, I'm
Yeah,
trying
there's
to be
a lot of
extra
custom-
careful.
You've got a good point. So Zach, what do you think? Should we send it up to,
I can recirculate that memo, and you're both correct that one of the things that memo says is if you're going to a public event that's open to any member of the public, there's not a limitation on the number of committee members who can be there as long as you don't secretly discuss committee business.
right?
You can also all go. The distinction, I think, between what we were talking about earlier with Leslie and potentially with these students, or when we did that site visit at the landfill, is if an event's not open to the public, and it's just committee members communicating with some other members of the public, that should be limited to 3 of you.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So that those meetings would be limited if we were to meet with members of that work group of the students?
Unless we publicize it as an open meeting, open to any individual, then, yeah, you shouldn't have more than 3 of you speaking to any members of the public.
Okay, so we should communicate ourselves who, if anyone, is going to go to those meetings. Okay.
Well, I think we could ask Leslie if we could go anyway. I mean, they were spread out as an invitation. She was going to do an invitation to everybody.
Well, the first thing I don't want to get too far off topic, and I had a few points on this topic, but the outreach that Leslie had originally recommended was that those student groups come and present to you. First, she said in May that we could try to get them here earlier in March. I think Leslie has a conflict, but that would be a public meeting. You could ask them questions. They could ask you questions.
Yeah.
If you're wanting to communicate with them on an individual basis, I think it'd be better if we did like a Zoom call or a meeting with 3 of you and as many of them, but not all 7 of you.
But this is-
It's a bummer, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we're just listening and asking questions, what's the difference between a Zoom and sitting there? in
It's
a
not open to the
room?
public.
It's yeah, and I think all these things that you and I had brainstormed, and I can invite you all to a lot more things that are open to the public
Yeah.
that are related to your work.
Yeah.
You know, presentations that are put on by UCI, for example, if UCI holds an open house, I can notify you of that. And then there's like the USCC grant program that has events every couple of weeks that you can participate in.
Yeah,
Ocean Protection
I'd love
Council.
that
Yeah.
just to like if there's a mailing list I can join or like point me towards it because I'm queuing into those types of events is something I'm very bad
Okay.
So me and Leslie can share more of those events, and then anyone who's available can join those events.
Okay.
I would be in favor of that. I'd
Yeah.
like to be aware of more opportunities,
Yeah.
rather than coming to a council meeting every 2 months and hearing about information that has been discussed in an open forum widely that we should have some awareness of and familiarity with and preparation for.
And it's partially on us to know where these kind of things
Yeah.
are, right? So
Let us know the opportunities if they're open.
Yep.
I agree that it would be really beneficial, and we're not, I personally are not on a lot of mailing lists about some of these different professional organizations where it sounds like you may be already. So you would definitely be more aware of more opportunities than I would be, so it would be helpful.
Yeah, I will send more of those, and then I know Nikki mentioned one, I think in response to Susan's question, you all could go to any public meeting held by the South OC.
Watershed Managed Area.
And then I think Leslie had mentioned a few other opportunities, but I can keep consolidating those and sending them out by email.
Yeah,
Just keep adding to your task list.
but Nikki, you were gonna send us a notice about that, correct? The
Watershed
water
Management,
district?
yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Alrighty, well, I will contribute the kinds of things that I get as well, and just send them all to you, unless you want me to send it to you for distribution.
If you send them to me, I'll distribute them.
Okay, will do.
You could also send them to us individually, one at a time. That wouldn't be great in Bronze Act, I don't think.
I don't think either one, but I'm just thinking that everybody would get them from
Yeah, no, it makes sense to have a single
Yeah.
source of info.
a single source, yes. Alrighty. Any other questions from
Zach, did
anybody?
you have other options you were going to share with us? Did you have some other comments?
I think we covered most of them. There was the member of the public pointed out that Save Our Beaches is having an event in 2 weeks at the community center. So even things like that, I would probably notify you of.
They do want an RSVP.
Yeah, I just RSVP'd on my phone.
They do
Right.
want an
You can go to the
RSVP.
website, or if you receive an email, you can respond via the email, and of course, that is open to the public, so everybody here can feel free to
Yeah.
join.
Thank you, John.
Just don't talk to anybody on this board,
You
on
need
this
the
committee.
tacos and have the cookies.
Yeah,
I'll present it on the
please.
Alright. Okay, gentlemen, I think this was a very good meeting,
Could,
and, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, is there one thing I was wondering if I could ask staff to follow up on, which is the status project update is fantastic. I was curious if it'd be possible to get an update on what our coordination is with OCTA.
I will ask, I think Leslie had put that fact sheet together. Is there a subset of our coordination with OCTA you're asking about? As Nikki noted, OCTA has different programs.
Good point. It's the sand project, or what's listed as number 3 here. And I think before the end of the year, there was a lot of news about some very big grants that they got, I think, to protect the railway. And I know part of that has been, I've heard that sand is part of that, but there's also, I think, some worries that it may just turn into riprap, and I'm just curious. It's great to see that the city's coordinating. I'm just wondering if we can get an update on what that coordination means and what we know about OCTA's plans for what they're doing to protect the railway and hopefully at the same time help our beaches.
I'd like to see that on the agenda.
You'd like to have an agenda item to discuss that?
Mhm. Do I have to have a vote on that? Monday? Do I need to have a vote on that?
I mean, we are on that item now. We're on items from committee members, so if you want to ask about an item to bring back to the next meeting, and ideally if you want to tie it into your work program, how it relates to sand acquisition or sand retention, that should be what the discussion is focused on.
I would like to agree with Deep that we should include that as an agendized item because it was something that was brought to my attention. You know, the fact that they've got all this money and what are they going to do with it? And we haven't heard anything since then. And the last thing the public knew was that it was in the OCTA's hands, and there hasn't really been anything except lack of transparency since then. So I'd like that before agenda, sooner if not later.
We all good? We all good for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other agenda items from any of you? Ideas?
I have comments.
Comments, yes.
So we talked a little bit about, in the sand retention discussion, about transport of sand, just an observation. I think we've all seen what's going on with our beaches since we've had the federal sand replenishment effort and at North Beach. What's nice about the federal project is the sand is of a different color, and it's quite clear where it's moved to. And last I saw, it's actually moved all the way south to Calafia. And probably between that project and North Beach, that both has contributed to the Mariposa Point sand that I was down in the lobby here before our meeting. There's a camera that focuses north of the pier, and it shows Mariposa Point quite clearly. It was low tide, obviously, but it was completely walkable. And I think the other observation I'd make is that we're now well into winter. There's been no event regarding the rail, and I think we have to conclude that the sand replenishment efforts of the city have gone a long way to insulating our beaches and protecting OCTA's tracks. That's all been on our dime, and hopefully the OCTA, and I think it's a great idea that we have that on the agenda so we can hear it. I will inform the committee that it's my understanding that OCTA is, they have a board meeting, I think it's February 10th, where my understanding is they're going to announce where they're at with their rail resiliency project in San Clemente. And it just is very notable that Mariposa Point, which was one of the hot spots that they were seeking to address with a lot more riprap and engineered revetment and some other, and Calafia, that both those spots have gotten additional sand, and that sand works. And it works better and is more environmentally friendly than hard armor. And so hopefully we can get that message out.
And to just add to that, John, one observation that I think is tangible to pretty much everybody here about Mariposa is last winter, the tunnels from Linda, Mariposa, 204s or El Portal, underneath, those were filled with cobbles.
Oh,
Now it's soft sand
oh.
inside, and the bridges that go under at least 204's area is probably only like 4 feet. So you have to really crouch under it. So the little embankments are catching a lot of sand too. It's just a general observation.
And the staircases that, is it, I don't know what the two are called, but
El Portal and Dihe are the
the foundation at the bottom is usually a giant 3-foot slab of concrete that you sort of had to crawl up, and now the sand is right up to the top of the. So you could actually, I don't know if you want to use those stairs, but you could actually use the stairs if you wanted to.
I use it all the time with my
Yeah.
child.
Can I ask you to find out with OCTA when that meeting is, and could you send out an information sheet to us then? The OCTA meeting that's going to discuss the San Clemente sand?
What's their board meeting?
What's their board meeting? Okay, well.
It's the board meeting, it's OCTA's, I think, is it a monthly or bi-monthly?
I don't know, I was
board
just
meeting?
asking Zach if he could do that and send that information to us.
I will search their public website and see when their monthly board meeting is and send it to you a week in advance. It hasn't happened yet.
That'd be great, thank you. Alrighty, we're all set? Okay. Who would like to, well, thank you very much, by the way, I thought this was a great meeting. Can we say, who would like to do the adjournment?
Oh, okay, we're just there already. Okay, I'm looking
Make
at
a motion to adjourn this meeting.
No, you have to, come on, you know better. You
second.
gotta read the whole thing.
Oh, okay, you want me to read the whole thing? Okay, I make a motion to adjourn this meeting to, adjourn to a regular meeting of the Coastal Advisory Committee would be, our next meeting would be Thursday, March the 20th at 4 p.m. here at City Hall Chambers, located at this very location.
Did you need my glasses?
Sometimes I do.
Seconded.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a vote on that?
Sorry, you gotta do it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays?
Thank you, Zach and Miley. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful week.
Now,
Thank you very much for your participation.